Do I really have to? We ready? I'll call this meeting to order good evening. This is a town hall hosted by the Planning Committee of Binghamton City Council, and we are here tonight to receive feedback, answer questions, hear comments, and also share more about the proactive rental housing inspection program that was introduced to City Council in early March. Before we get into what proactive code enforcement is and the logistics of the legislation being considered, I'd like to start with just a brief overview, less than 10 minutes, of existing code enforcement protocols so that we're clear on how this approach would be different. So currently, if a tenant, oh, yes, please.
Chair Rathmel,
Present.
Councilmember Hotchkiss,
Present.
Councilmembers Dundon and Murray are also present. Councilmember Kavanaugh is absent.
Okay, so to jump right in, currently, if a tenant or neighbor has a concern about the condition of a property, they can call code to make a complaint. That call prompts an inspection by a code enforcement officer who will notify the property owner if violations were identified and set a date for when deficiencies must be remediated, typically within 5 days. If the conditions aren't fixed, an appearance ticket is issued for, and this is a very cursory overview. Typically, an appearance ticket is issued for code court. The first court appearance is an arraignment where the owner is informed of the charges. They may plead guilty or not guilty, and if the case moves forward, a hearing date is set. So almost certainly already by that point, we are very likely at least a month out from when the initial complaint was made. And many cases are adjourned multiple times before resolution, some taking 12 to 18 months to litigate, all while the tenants or neighbors who made the complaint are left to live with the conditions they reported. With this complaint-based system, it is also true that the rental units with the worst violations of health and safety codes are often never reported because the tenants are in vulnerable situations and fear retaliation or harassment from their landlord for calling code, or that their building will be condemned as unfit for human habitation and will be out on the street either way. A proactive code enforcement program, rather, includes all rental units and is intended to systematically identify hazardous conditions to protect the health and safety of occupants and prevent properties from deteriorating into condemnation. The proactive rental housing inspection program that Council has been reviewing since March will require every landlord who operates a rental housing business within the city to obtain a license to do so by registering their properties and demonstrating that the units they intend to collect rent for are habitable for human occupation. This program will apply to all rental units in the city of Binghamton except, and there are 4 categories, rental units in a state-licensed hospital, hospice, community care facility, or nursing home, a convent, monastery, or other facility occupied exclusively by members of a religious order, and on-campus student housing, rental units that are owned, operated by, or receive funding or subsidies from federal, state, or local government entities and are inspected by that entity at least once every 5 years. The third category exempted, owner-occupied properties with no more than 2 units, and then properties newly constructed within the last 3 years. As it's currently written, registration would be required annually and would need to include a description of the property, including the street address and parcel number, the number of units in each property and the number of bedrooms in each unit, the name and current contact information of the owner, the name and current contact information of a local authorized representative who has an address in Broome, name, address, and telephone number of the person or entities that tenants can contact in order to request that repairs be made, and the contact's business relationship to the owner. And finally, the date, location, and type of code violations the owner has been cited for in the past 3 years. So that's the registration component. A program fee of $100 a unit would also be required annually, with a maximum cumulative fee for any property set at $2,500. There is a reduced registration fee proposed in the program as it's currently written of $50 per unit for owners who have consistently registered their properties. Under the rental registration ordinance that was adopted in 2013, as long as no code violations have been cited in the last 3 years, or $75 per unit if 5 or fewer code violations were cited and corrected within the time limit specified. Finally, upon registration, the program would require an initial inspection of all the units identified and then routine inspections every 3 years thereafter. Owners will be issued a notice of compliance with a proactive rental housing inspection program when their properties are confirmed as habitable, and this notice will function as their license to operate. I want to just note here, the rollout of these inspections has not yet been determined. We know they will need to be phased in, likely over at least 3 years following the program's adoption, and we've discussed a few approaches, but the logistics are very much still being considered and are, like the rest of this legislation, still in draft form, so we would welcome thoughts on implementation if folks have them. In terms of how the actual enforcement of these requirements would be different from present protocol, the program includes a handful of compliance mechanisms that do not exist in current code ordinances. The first, the proactive rental housing inspection would make it unlawful for a landlord to pursue eviction in Binghamton City Court against a tenant within a property that does not have a notice of compliance. I want to be clear here because this misperception has come up. This restriction does not apply to code violations in general. If you, as a landlord, as an owner, submitted the registration, paid the program fee, and had an inspection that confirmed habitability, the notice of compliance you receive is good for 3 years in between inspections, as long as the registration and fee are current. So individual code violations that occurred generally would not prohibit a landlord from filing a summary proceeding. Second, while the accumulation of civil penalties while violations persist unaddressed are already recoverable in code court, this program reduces the time frame within which those penalties must be paid to 45 days and levies unpaid charges to the property's tax bill after 6 months. Third, the program establishes a rent escrow option for tenants living in buildings that do not have a current notice of compliance, providing a way for tenants to legally withhold rent to prevent landlords from extracting profit from their properties without making investments that ensure the health and safety of its occupants. Under warrant of habitability law, tenants already have a way to legally withhold rent when requested repairs are not made. This rent escrow option would be solely in relation to compliance with the proactive code requirements. Finally, and then I promise I'll stop saying words. As it is currently written, the code supervisor would be expected to present annually to City Council regarding program activities, the program's progress, and any findings for quality assurance monitoring. At this time, we're going to open the floor. Each individual with questions or comments will have up to 5 minutes to share. We do ask that you share your name and relationship to the legislation, and then feel free to go right ahead. I think folks have already, so as these chairs empty, feel free to come down and take them so that the flow is smooth. But all you need to do is make sure that the green light on the mic in front is on, and we welcome comments and questions.
Press that button once on the light.
Can I request they also include the district they have the relationship with, whether it's as a landlord where they own property or as a tenant where they live? be appreciated.
I am not feeling well. That's why I asked to go first. Please bear with me. I have 30 questions and I have 5 minutes to ask them. That was not published prior to this event. Okay, there's a lot less people here today than there was last time. I don't know why we can't have more time. Several of the representatives here were significantly late. That's taxpayer dollars. Okay, there's no way that you can possibly answer my questions, so I'm just going to ask as many as possible, and all the rest are there. I do want answers. I'll take my answers later, I guess. Okay, there was a lot of things I did not understand about this program until just now. It would have been very beneficial to know those things in advance. They weren't in the news articles. My name is Shannon Potts. I'm a landlord on the West Side. I'm a former tenant on the West Side. When I came in 1998, the West Side was full of students. Those students kept the West Side afloat. Okay. One, I want to make sure I understand. The plan is that the City of Binghamton is going to take money from some landlords in order to give some other landlords money to maintain and repair properties. That's my first question. I don't need an answer at this time. Or is the plan that the City of Binghamton is going to take money from landlords who need money to improve and maintain properties and give that money indirectly or directly to essentially former tenants who are unwilling or unable to pay rent? Can we make a grocery plan like that? That would save me a bundle on groceries. Is poor housing, this is the third question, is poor housing stock a problem in the entire city? Is everyone affected? Isn't it everyone's responsibility to improve the housing stock? Number four, aren't all property owners who don't rent out properties, who elect not to be landlords, also responsible for the lack of quality rental units in the city? Aren't they occupying space in the City of Binghamton that could be used by multiple tenants? Five, the City of Binghamton is planning to bring in $1 million a year through this program, correct? How will City of Binghamton ensure that money is used for the purpose you have stated? What percentage of the money will go to your two competing purposes, helping landlords or helping former tenants? Excuse me. How will the complaint-based inspections be affected by your proposed new program? Will your proposed 4 new inspectors ever be diverted to complaint-based inspections, or will the new inspections be continually diverted toward complaint-based inspections? How will complainants, and there must be many, be handled expeditiously? If there aren't many complaints, why are you judging the market and housing choices of City of Binghamton residents? Will tenants experience, number 7, will tenants experience problems in the future? Experiencing problems in the future have to wait longer for the City of Binghamton to respond to their complaints as inspectors assigned to your proposed program struggle to keep up with quotas? Number 8, do other municipalities in the immediate area inspect rental properties on a complaint-based basis already, or is it on a recurring scheduled basis? Are tenants moving? Will people be moving from Binghamton to other localities? 9, what will the per worker income of the new inspectors be, and how will you ensure that their inspections are always unbiased and legitimate? Will they be under pressure to cut corners or take bribes, essentially? It's a proactive program. I believe it's my time. Thank you. Okay, well, I would like the time given back to me. Thank you. How will the City of Binghamton, number 10, how will the City of Binghamton handle rental properties inspections when tenants refuse the City of Binghamton access to the inspection? Will the property fail inspection? Will the landlord lose his license to rent and be fined and unable to collect rents? Do you think this would incentivize some tenants to either deny inspections or do damage to rental property? Do you think a tenant is capable of encouraging vermin to reside in a residence in order to get out of paying rent? They are. 11, will inspectors be under pressure to pass some inspections as favors to political and social favorites of City of Binghamton employees, elected officials, and appointed administration? 12, is the mayor or city council responsible to address public or official corruption in the administration of the City of Binghamton? We are talking about $1 million there, or both. 13, will all inspections be recorded in real time and the recordings available as a matter of public record? How will the public know that all inspections are administered uniformly and fairly? Will an attorney or a landlord be able to conduct discovery for compliance in comparable residences? 14, will referrals to social services or law enforcement be made by inspectors in the private residence of tenants? Are there significant concerns about the constitutionality of the implementation of your proposed program? Can we come over to your houses and see what's going on? 15, will all rental units in the City of Binghamton pay the same rental fee? I believe the answer is no. And I think that's a very important question. Will any units be excluded? If any units are excluded, why? Isn't it everyone's responsibility to maintain our housing stock and reduce homelessness, not just the poor local landlords? 16, how will mistakes and corruption impact the ability of landlords to properly manage their rental properties? Look what happened when I made a complaint to the city of Binghamton. Last week, I made a complaint to the water service or to the treasury regarding a notice I got on my door saying that I was final notice saying that I had not paid my bill, except I had paid my bill the week before. The only problem was I made a complaint at the same time because there was inaccuracies in the billing process. And apparently that got the attention of somebody because not only did I get that notice, I got another notice in the mail 2 days later. Okay. I think you underestimate the human factor. All right. So where were we? 17, will landlords who don't want to be harassed be unofficially expected to make political contributions to the administration to ensure their properties are not targeted by zealous inspectors employed by administration with an oversized agenda? 18, do you consider $1 million every year to be a minor amount of income for the city? At a town meeting a few months ago, the chairperson chided landlords for thinking that their efforts should not be subject to undue government oversight. However, she was quoted by the media a few weeks ago complaining bitterly about the federal government's removal of block grants. For years, I've asked myself how it is that the city of Binghamton seems to be unwilling to respect the priorities of the federal government. If it is 19, if it is everyone's responsibility to keep rental properties in the city of Binghamton in good order and to prevent homelessness, shouldn't everyone contribute financially? 20, are the landlords any more responsible to prevent homelessness than non-landlords? If landlords have more responsibility, why are you proposing to take money from them when they need that money to maintain their properties? Will landlords have to charge tenants more rent in order to pay the city of Binghamton $1 million? 21,
You have just under 30 seconds left.
how much money would the city of Binghamton get if every resident, rental or not, paid a bedroom tax? 22, do local residents and businesses benefit from having the economic impact of local consumers and workers who find rental housing in the city of Binghamton? Can you fit more tenants or non-tenants typically in a given amount of space? 23, how will the city of Binghamton commit and regulate the distribution of funds through this proposed program? Will these funds go directly into the city of Binghamton general fund? 24, do funds received by the city of Binghamton from other sources always go back to related costs? For example, do funds received from the city of Binghamton's ambulances automatically go
Your
back to
time
the
is
fire
up.
department, which provides the essential fire service and ambulance service? Who will have control of these proposed rental program funds now and 10 years from now? I think there's a lot of things that need to be addressed. I don't know how you would propose to get the rest of these questions on the record. I would ask the city clerk to include them in whatever record you guys make of this.
There's currently a packet upstairs containing the entire text of the legislation as it stands.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
There's currently a packet right there if you'd like. You're absolutely welcome to grab there for the public. It contains the current content of the legislation as it stands.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. And I won't attempt to necessarily address all of the questions, but just for some benefit of those who are here, the ones that stand out to me as kind of immediately available for response. So the question about what if a tenant refuses access for the inspection, if a tenant, and this is directly in the legislation, if a tenant does not consent to entry for the inspections, the owner is not considered in violations. There's an element certainly where an inspection warrant could be pursued in order to compel the tenant to allow the inspection, but that would be on the inspector and not on the owner. I think the converse of that, if a tenant were to report that the landlord had advised them not to consent to access or threaten some kind of retaliation or harassment, that would be considered a violation. And I appreciate you bringing this piece up because it's also been asked a handful of times. This proactive rental housing inspection program is not intended to replace the existing complaint-based option. It's a supplement to support and expand the capacity of code enforcement to respond specifically to rental housing programs.
Allowed to respond?
Thank you. No, I don't believe so. I think after, if we have time when others have shared, you would be welcome to come back up to speak further.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
The sign up was for updates for this town hall. If you'd like to participate, there is a sign up sheet up there.
I think that, and I apologize for that, we didn't communicate that well, but typically how we go through is just order of who's seated. No. No, that's okay. It's okay. If you've not been here before, it's not immediately apparent. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening. My name is James Erbos. I reside on the south side of Binghamton, lifelong resident of Binghamton. Hadassah is my representative for the south side. I'm a retired fire lieutenant with the city of Binghamton, 32 years of service. And I personally have written up code violations when we go into these buildings, uninhabitable for human beings, broken stairs, and stuff like that. Are there enough code enforcement officials in Binghamton right now? Or are you looking to get more? Because some of my complaints were delayed for a long time, and I had to go through the fire marshal to have my guys safe going into the same building over and over and over again with the same problem.
I'm sorry, do you want a response during, or should I write them down so he can save his time and then
Yeah,
respond?
I mean, I won't be as long as the other guy, but
I mean, very quickly, we do, short answer, no. There are not currently enough
Right,
code enforcement
right.
officers
So-
to handle existing operations.
okay.
We do anticipate that to complete the first round of inspections and then ongoing inspections
Okay.
within 3 years, we would need to hire 4 more.
Okay, so I'll get to that, but the money you're collecting, is that going to supplement the positions? Is that what this is
The-
for? Not our
yes,
tax
any-
dollars?
Correct. So this
Okay.
would not be from tax dollars. That's why the program fee is required. So it would go
Okay.
directly back into
So,
program
I'm pretty
operations.
certain everybody in this room pays taxes for specific services, fire, police, code enforcement, public works, et cetera. So I understand this resolution here was put forth to try to simulate or copy Syracuse, which has about 145,000 people, as opposed to Binghamton, which is 46,000 on a good day with the students. And I'm pretty sure I can speak for everybody in this room. Why are you guys trying to impose a tax or a fee on us when 95% of the problem is absentee landlords? You guys know that big fire on the west side a couple of weeks ago. Impose a $500,000 fee on those people who are in it for the money. They live in New York City or wherever, absentee landlords, and they're just grabbing the dough and running. Section 8 housing, whatever they do, they grab the money and go. Most of them were absentee landlords. And one of the biggest eyesores in the city of Binghamton, after one of our firefighters died in the collapse on Main Street, was the Masonic Temple. I'm 63 years old. I've been a kid. That's been an eyesore and a public safety problem as long as I can remember. I don't remember anything in that building. My brother was a firefighter. He pulled dead bodies out of there. There's fires in there with vagrants living in there. I mean, there's other means of public safety or inspections that you guys can do to make the city better. But I'm sure all these people in this room will agree that it's not us. And you're sticking us with $100 fee, and you're trying to get in our pocket when we pay taxes for these services. It's the absentee landlords who, and if you check the record, have been written up numerous times and nothing happens. It's cheaper to pay the fine than to fix the problem. So I told you I wouldn't be as long as the last guy, so thanks for listening.
I think just to quickly address, like, I don't think we can impose taxes on some landlords and not others without there being legal complication.
It's a
like
fine.
fees.
It's a fine.
Fine is what I
Right,
meant.
it's a fine. So once they're written up and they would come and re-inspect it, the code enforcement officials would re-inspect. If it's fixed, it's great. If you get written up again, whack them $500. That would take care of 5 people in this room. Okay? And if they do it again, whack them $1,000. Hit them in the pocketbook where it hits everybody, except the good people in this room that are here to make the city better. You know, I'm not trying to start a bunch of SHIT, but you know what I'm saying.
No, that's okay, and you're welcome to share your piece, certainly. I think the compliance mechanisms that I outlined are specifically in this legislation to impact profit potential for those landlords, so they cannot continue to not invest in their properties to ensure code compliance, to ensure habitability. This is in no way anti-landlord. This is very much about public safety
Right.
and the health and safety of occupants.
Which we pay taxes for right now for that service.
I think I'm unclear on the connection you're making to
So-
taxes.
People who own property in the city of Binghamton pay taxes for public safety, for public works, for the sidewalks, for the roads, for the garbage, for the water, the sewer, police, fire, code enforcement as a mechanism of the city business. That
So
should be,
only-
that's,
Only about, I mentioned that code enforcement is not sufficiently staffed at this time, even with not a sufficient staff. Code operations are only funded about less than 50% when it comes to taxpayer dollars. So there are other federal subsidies that enhance and subsidize code enforcement operations.
grants like the
And
police get and
the-
the fire department gets, correct?
There's CDBG funding
Yes.
at this point. To your mention of Syracuse, so I would actually say that the model for a proactive code enforcement system is Rochester, but none of the municipalities that operate a proactive code enforcement system that we've been in touch with or that we've reviewed, it's not about population. It's again about the safety and
Okay.
conditions
Okay.
of properties.
I got you. And if somebody in this room and this group here of you guys could look into the code issues that have been issued to regular people, somebody lets their grass grow, that's not a big deal. Bad problems, health and safety, like you state. Look into that, and I can guarantee you that 90% of that is absentee landlords who don't give about their property. They're in it for this.
And Mr. Zervos, that's where you're right. And the thing is when you give them a fine, they take it to court and you waste more taxpayers' money going after the fine.
You're wasting my money by me paying to have my places, which are pristine, like everybody else in this room. You're charging us to let these people just skate. You gotta stick it to them. And that's where it hurts, in the pocketbook.
And look what that did with Andrew and his properties. We ended up with 40 properties that were worth nothing. And it didn't help our housing stock.
Did
and
it
didn't
save
help
one
anything
life?
else.
Did it save one life?
I couldn't say yes or no.
Well,
on that.
I'm sure it did, because I've been to multiple fires at his places. In fact, he just had one on Thorpe Street, right?
Yep.
It got the second house going.
Yeah.
I've been retired for 2 years, but enough is enough, man. You got to stop hitting us in the pocket and get those.
But
guys.
just finding him didn't stop them properties from ending up the way they did. So if it's that same way with the absentee landlords, our housing stock will end up going in the toilet. The only way to really hurt their
Okay.
pocketbooks is the registration to where they can no longer rent the property unless they have the certificate of completion.
Can you seize those properties and sell them to a contractor that
For-
can,
for
because there's a
hundreds-
house, there's a
I mean,
house- a
for-
housing problem in the city of Binghamton? You know, take
Well,
their
we can seize them
properties
for
and
eminent
sell it to a
domain, but
guy
you're
for
talking
a
hundreds of
nickel on
thousands
it.
of dollars of legal fees, which is more taxpayer money. No different than like Binghamton Plaza, $1 million in legal fees to seize that property.
So, again, if there's additional recommendations that you would have, I think once we've been able to get through everyone's comments, you're
Yep,
welcome to
yep.
come back and share further.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Colton Emmett. I live on the west side of Binghamton. I own a rental and I own the house right next to it. And like Jimmy said, I think the main issue everyone knows is the out of area landlords. I have personally declared war against them. Everyone in my neighborhood, I call code diligently. I've written letters to them. I'll do their lawn for free. I want to live in a beautiful neighborhood. I pay $6,500 in taxes a year on one property and $6,000 on the other, and I have to deal with degeneracy out my front door. So again, I think you guys are very well intended with this, but at the root of it, you are there are local landlords who really do the right thing. I mean, I spent my own money. I don't know the tax system. I don't know all the loopholes to get credit on whatever the money I'm putting into my home, but I made damn sure I have the most beautiful homes on the block and that those who are renting from me will never have an issue. And if they do, they come to me and they don't take legal action. So again, I really believe it's community fostered and we've completely lost that. I don't know if you're just not allowed, if we could just write legislation to not allow anybody from out of those city limits to do real estate in Binghamton. Again,
That's against
Is-
free market.
I get it. I get it. I'm in
Is,
real estate, so I completely understand. But again, I don't know how you guys can do it without being politically correct. Like, I think someone really needs to declare war on this issue and hire on an investigative team to like research into each. I do it in my free time. I mean,
Yeah,
I
you
know every
could I
owner.
just understand the, so an aspect of this legislation would be to very specifically I mean, that's the registration piece, to identify those who own and operate rental properties locally. I want to try to understand so is it the $100 a unit fee? And the way that we, and in conversation with other municipalities, the way that that breaks out would be $8 a month per unit. And
So-
is that the primary?
No,
Is-
the money's not an issue. I think
Okay.
the issue is good people do the right thing. Laws are made for the lower echelon of people who don't follow the rules. So good people, it's the principle that good people are affected by the people who just are neglectful, who don't do the right thing, who are in the economy or in the Binghamton housing market for money. And I don't want to be bothered. I have the most beautiful house on the block. I take pride in it. I don't want to have to register my fee. Like, I don't want to have to do all of these extra steps when I know I'm doing the right thing and I'm fostering community within my community. And it's the out of area landlords that they're an issue. I mean, they are just a blatant issue. The amount of times I've tried to mow my neighbor's lawn because he just doesn't do it, and I call code, and code has been very good on it. I appreciate them. They know me by my first name. I call every week. Hoping that they're working with me on this, but I do want to read something a little more scripted.
Oh, sure.
Just, we'll get into it. Good evening, members of the council, neighbors, and fellow residents. My name is Colton Emmett. I was born and raised on the west side of Binghamton, and I stand before you today not just as a homeowner, not just as a real estate professional, not just as a landlord, but as someone who deeply loves this city. We are facing a silent crisis, one that seeps in slowly, house by house, until entire blocks lose their dignity and integrity. I'm speaking of the influx of out-of-area investors. People who see our neighborhoods not as communities, but as cash cows. They don't walk these sidewalks. They don't know the names of the elderly couple on the porch. They don't see the potential in the broken fence or the promise in a newly painted door. They only see numbers. And when profit is the only motive, beauty becomes an afterthought. And we, the good citizens who do the right thing when no one else is watching, who live, work, and play in this community, are being affected. What we're losing is something you can't measure on a spreadsheet. It's pride in home ownership. When landlords live among us, when they raise their families here, when they drive past their rentals every day, they care. They plant flowers, they fix the steps, they wave to the neighbors. But when ownership is absentee, stewardship dies. And when stewardship dies, so does the community character and its integrity along with it. I'm not here to vilify every investor. I believe in responsible development. I believe in restoration, but we must draw a clear line between investment and exploitation. Our streets deserve better than peeling paint, overgrown lawns, and revolving doors of tenants with no guidance or support. And again, I get that's what you guys are trying to do, but it is negatively affecting us who just already do the right thing.
You have just over 30 seconds.
Okay. We are Binghamton. We are a city of history, of craftsmanship, of resilience, once known as the Parlor City. My grandparents speak of elm tree-lined streets, beautiful, well-kept homes, doors you didn't have to lock at night. You didn't have to worry about who would buy in when your neighborhood home came up for sale. Communities thrived, neighborhoods had integrity, and everything and everywhere was beautiful because pride in ownership meant something. The standard has dropped immensely. We've allowed degeneracy to thrive, and it starts with chipped paint and untrimmed hedges. Unkept properties invite degeneracy. It's time we stand up and protect what makes Binghamton home. So tonight, I know I have 30 seconds. Please just let me get through this because this is really coming from the heart. So tonight, I'm asking this council to take meaningful steps to enforce stricter property maintenance codes and hold out-of-town owners accountable. Again, I told you I've declared war. Beauty standards in place, not just makeshift code enforcements for safety. I mean, we need real beauty. That's what makes a neighborhood great. That's when people start to rise up, when beauty thrives. People with vision and drive who come to work to fulfill a purpose, not just a city job that guarantees good pay and pension. I've
So
applied
if
for,
we, sorry, your time is up.
I've applied for
we-
code enforcement and I didn't get the job. I think it was because I would love nothing more than writing tickets and getting these
Sure.
people.
And I think, so what stands, it's clear that you want a better standard, a higher standard for property maintenance locally. What I think I'm slightly confused by would be if you also said that you don't want to be bothered. So if we're raising that standard universally, because I'm not sure that we can raise it ununiversally or discriminately, if a registration form, and if it's not about the money because it's only $8 a unit a month, if that's not the issue, but you want the standard raised, you just don't want it to apply.
It's definitely a
Gee.
larger cultural issue, but I think the city does need to get some of the brightest minds together to figure this out and figure out what are we doing moving forward to stop degeneracy from creeping in everywhere in the city. And again, raising the standard, but putting targets on the backs of those who are actually the issue, which is the out-of-area investors using our housing for profit and not community building.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Yep.
I'm Ann Lott. My husband's a landlord. Can you hear me? Hold the microphone closer. Okay. Okay, it's a good idea for bad landlords. We have tenants that are scared of them. I think this is a good idea to make them stick by the code, you know, do the right thing. That's a good thing about your idea. And you said, I think that, let's pretend you had a HUD tenant. They're not going to be part of this, right?
There is a category that is exempt
Does
if
they have
it's
regular
federal, if it's
inspections?
state, federal, local grants that require inspections within at
All right.
least 5
And
years.
that's a good thing. Of course, the $100 cost per tenant or whatever it is, the tenant's gonna end up paying that anyway. It's not like the landlord is, they're just gonna raise the rent for that. But the last thing is you said about, it made it sound like, say, for example, SUNY students. SUNY housing is not gonna have to follow these rules, right?
Not on campus housing, but every rental apartment otherwise. So yes, student housing off campus would be impacted.
So if Binghamton is considered on campus, even though the campus is in Vestal?
The city
Bing-
of Binghamton is off campus. So everything, this is like city government, everything within the city is off campus housing. So it applied to everybody in the city except for the exemptions. So all the student housing that's on the west side, downtown still applies. It's just not the dorms on campus. Like that's, if they want to adopt this, they can do that and figure it out. But that's for Vestal to figure out. This is big.
Okay, so what you're saying, any student housing in Binghamton would have to follow the rules. Okay,
Correct.
sounds fair. That's all.
Thank you.
Hey, can you hear me? Okay, I would consider myself a small-time landlord. I had worked a regular job for like 35 and a half years before I retired. And I've got some property. One is on Pleasant Avenue, which is by the Cheryl Lindsay Park. And I've got a real nice house over there. It's got vinyl siding on it. It looks real nice. Well, 2 years ago, across the street, they rented to somebody and they decided to cook some meth. So the house caught fire, burned down. That was 2 years ago. And it's gone. All it is a vacant lot. Now, on the left-hand side of my house by Shore Lindsay Park, there's another house there. And all the windows are broken. It's been vacant for at least 2 years. And I don't know. I just wish we had a little more code over there, or some kind of a way to make things secure. So
Yeah,
I guess
and
that's about it.
I appreciate that perspective. Pleasant is absolutely an impacted street. I mean, and really so much of what we see on Pleasant Ave is because of the lack of sufficient and effective code enforcement in the last decade plus. I will say what this proactive rental housing inspection program does not address are our vacant buildings. That is something that council is working on, is looking into. But the goal would be to prevent properties from deteriorating to the point of condemnation, like many of the ones, the landlords whom those properties have changed hands among are well known to us, and several of them are local. I do hear folks on the out of town aspect, but some of our worst local offenders are very local. But thank you for sharing about Pleasant.
Yeah, I wanted to mention it, and on Pleasant Street, going all the way down on the left-hand side, there's another house that they've pretty well torn down. It was a wreck. So it's the neighborhood isn't good. Like I say, I've had a house there. I've had it since the 70s, and fortunately, I don't have to sell it, but oh well. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Paul Price. I work and live in the city. I work on sort of the west side, and I live on the south side. I know the younger fellow here said he didn't think this was about money. I'm not a younger fellow anymore, and honestly, I think it is about the money on one level. The real estate taxes in this community are some of the highest in the nation compared to the property values. And I really do look at this as a tax to the mom and pop landlords. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you add it to what we're already paying, I think it is another tax. I know there was a time, and I'm not smart enough to know how to figure it, but a number of years back, I remember hearing that the city was near its constitutional taxing limit. I don't know how that's calculated or, what that number is, but the taxes certainly haven't gone down around here. And on the subject of taxes, it's really not related to this legislation, but it has to do with some of these landlords that have converted a lot of the stock to student housing. There was a time when some of these buildings were taxed at the non-homestead rate. Some of these folks have packed these buildings full of kids, and somehow they're taxed at the non-homestead or the homestead rate, which I thought was for single family homes and small two families. But apparently I'm wrong, because I can tell you within 2 blocks of my office, there's probably 5 of those properties that's been going on. And some of those things could have been resolved by requiring when you sell a property to get a certificate of compliance with code. That's never been a requirement here, but it could be. And, it seems like a lot of people didn't want that because they didn't want to deal with the code. That's not good. We should have code enforcement. But I just think it's a basic service, and paying the taxes we're paying around here, the city code's been around for I don't know how long, but probably the 60s. it's a basic service. My tax bill should be paying for the code enforcement in this city. And if it's not, I don't know what to say, but I don't think I should fill that need. Additionally, with respect to the cost, we're establishing this pot based on the math where it seems like there's going to be $1 million a year for something. I don't really know what it is, but again, if there's that much of a surplus on an annual basis, I really haven't signed up to subsidize anything other than maybe hiring code enforcement people. That might make sense, but for me as a small landlord to, fulfill what the state and the federal government ought to be fulfilling makes absolutely no sense to me. And no particular follow-up order here. I know I've heard that, Rochester and San Francisco were maybe sort of the cities that were looked to talk about a template. I think the registration is less expensive in Rochester. I think the legislation is less expensive in San Francisco. I think the registration is less expensive in Ithaca. I know it appears that the code in all those cities also wants to know about who's the short-term rentals and who's operating Airbnbs and who's not paying taxes, who's not contributing to this pot. Why are they excluded? Also, why are we excluding the big landlords? If it's not about the money, the landlords that have more than, 25 units don't have to pay after it's capped out at $2,500 a year. I mean, I think that's what the legislation says.
You have
Maybe
about
It's
1
a-
minute left.
It's a per building cumulative maximum, not a per unit in a single building cumulative maximum.
So if I have 25 units in one building or 26 units in one building, it's 25 units, 2,500 to that building. So you're not saying if I have 5 buildings with 25 units, I pay 2,500. I pay 2,500, 2,500,
Correct.
2,500. Well, that clarifies that because that made no sense to me. But yeah, what's going on with the Airbnbs? I think I've heard from code that you're not supposed to be doing that in the city of Binghamton.
Correct.
If,
They have
if
to go to
we
planning
really,
commission.
if we really think that that's not happening in the city of Binghamton, go on Airbnb. Google Airbnb.
We are,
Binghamton,
and
New
I've
York.
been pushing the mayor on this. This is a topic that has come up in meetings. I've requested he send out non-compliance letters to everyone on Airbnb who has not gone through planning commission. He seems hesitant to take that action. I will keep pushing.
I get that and I appreciate that. But again, these people are making money and they're not contributing. I'm a small landlord. Is $100 a year a lot of money? It's not a ton of money and I've got other options, but the well in my mind is running dry as a taxpayer. And, that's really why I think the cost is problematic.
Your time is up.
I mean, one thing that continues to stand out to me in comments, so there's a lot of mention about the taxes that are paid. We are looking at this notice of compliance as functioning as a license to operate. So we're looking at rental properties as a business that local landlords are pursuing. And the comparison I would make in ensuring the health and safety of occupants would be to a restaurant that is operating a business and has to comply with standards in order to demonstrate that the business they're providing is ensuring the health and safety of those who consume it. So I think that's a distinction that I would identify. And just to also
I
share
didn't mean to imply that I didn't think having safe and good housing is a problem. And Chris has contacted me on more than one occasion. I didn't tell him to go away because he didn't have a warrant. I fixed it. It's good.
Thank you. Since you mentioned, I think Syracuse, so the primary municipalities that we at least initially.
And Rochester and Syracuse.
Rochester
and San
is
Francisco.
certainly the model to mimic. Just New York, so Rochester, Albany, Kingston, Syracuse have been in the mix and will continue to be and reach out to them. But there are certainly several municipalities in the state that
Yeah.
this impact.
And it all looks
or
like
is
it's
applied
online,
within.
so it's available to the public once this gets in place. And I think one of the other benefits is because it is a problem, all these other cities, Rochester, San Francisco, Ithaca, there's a portal where you can actually find out allegedly who's the owners of these LLCs. And I know we don't know now because I have a neighbor I've called to try to find out about, and I get a name and I call them, I don't own that thing anymore.
We are hoping the registration aspect of this program will address that.
Thanks.
Thanks, Paul.
Good evening. My name is Tarek Abdelazim, a longtime Binghamton resident. I live in Councilman Rathmell's district, and I am thrilled to see that moving forward. Some folks may know I also was a former city's director of planning, housing, and community development. I think we did some things well, and I think we missed the boat on some things. And happy to be accountable for those mistakes, but mistakes are opportunities to learn. For the last 11 years, I've been working for a national nonprofit that helps communities all over this country address vacant, deteriorated properties. I have become quite an expert on that, and we've actually written the authoritative book on reevaluating code enforcement, which I delightfully saw was quoted in this. So thank you.
Read it.
It represents decades of practitioner experience, but also what's working in cities all over this country. Right? We are not facing a problem in a vacuum. You could transfer this policy to any community and you would hear iterations of the same concerns. But I think it's really important to first focus on what is the problem that this policy is trying to solve. Because in just the few speakers before me, I heard public corruption and cronyism, culture of degeneracy, out-of-towners using properties to extract profit, vacant buildings being unsafe to the point of tragedy, and an unfair and inaccurate property valuation and taxation system. I agree with all of those. Those are problems here and in many other communities. I'm not diminishing or belittling that, but this isn't meant to address any of those. The problems for people who've been working in housing in this community and elsewhere is that we have a housing crisis. We have a crisis of vacancy. We have a crisis of affordability. And we have a crisis of habitability. And by that, I mean housing that is safe for all occupants. The problems we have in rental housing is that children are being poisoned by lead, impacting their educational achievements and learning for their entire life. The problem we have are other health hazards, asthma, mold, bed bugs, infestation. This leads to mental stress, mental trauma. There's safety risks. This gentleman mentioned he's gone into buildings with holes in the bedrooms, no fire alarms. We have tenants that are vulnerable to abusive landlords. Some of those landlords that were mentioned, those out-of-towners, those LLC entities that you cannot prosecute in a court because you can't bring an LLC into court. You have to have humans. And then the problem of deterioration. Because you could say that, well, it's not my issue, but when deterioration leads to demolition that's funded by taxpayers, a la Anzaru and many others, we pay for it. So in this book, we had identified those different crises, but also subsets of different properties. And with each subset of properties, we identified the optimal policy tool that is working in communities all over this country. Trying to prohibit, buyers, like I would love to explore some of those, but they've been explored. They're unconstitutional. They're illegal. Like when
We have
you,
about 1 minute left.
yeah, when you cut away the chaff, you get this policy as the greatest way to address the problems that I've just outlined and that many of the folks here understand. This is going to help all folks. And I'm telling you right now, if I could pay $8 extra a month to ensure children, seniors, and tenants live in safer housing and have more protections, I'd pay it. So I am willing to adopt a responsible local landlord here today, and I will pay your fee in perpetuity. Just come out and see me. The second thing is when you're done, if you are a good landlord, you're $50, $4 a month. That's a latte at Otto, formerly known as Liaveggi. I think that we really need to protect our residents' health and safety. And when folks have been tax it, seconds, because this keeps going out, right? 10 seconds. Please come down when this council is engaged in the budget process and demand that more of your taxes go towards real programs that protect the health and safety of our residents. $34 million tax levy and $250,000 goes to code enforcement. And housing is the most important determinant of our economic, mental, social health. Thank you.
Wanted to jump in on the lead. When for those of us that have been in office since the beginning of the term, I know two of you started more recently. The county health department did have us come in and meet with them and gave us maps of lead issues in our districts. So I know even in South Side, I was not expecting to see the lead results that I was seeing coming from housing. So it is a significant problem, and we have maps per district in case people are interested on lead in the city of Binghamton.
The opportunity.
Kids are testing the levels to
The
have
opportunity
significant issues.
with the health department's mapping of lead impact throughout the county, they were awarded a good bit of funding for the next 5 years to address in the very same way that this addresses and requires a rental registration and motivates inspection. The Broome County Health Department received funding to pursue a New York State lead rental registry. And so we have an opportunity to partner with them in this rollout and its implementation. That award has not yet been implemented, so they're not in a position to support yet, but we're hoping by the point of adoption, if we move forward, that they would be able to partner.
Hello. After months of being in the shadows, Hadassah has been continually asking me to come out and ask some questions. So I'm doing that. My name is Tom Egan. I live in the third district, Robert Kavanaugh's district. I guess I'm a landlord. I guess I would be described as a, more of a mom and pop style. I own a manufacturing company. And as part of my retirement, I've invested over the years in a number of properties. I probably would be in the category of the local landlord. In fact, in order to provide good service to my tenants, I make sure that I only purchase properties within walking distance of my home so that if they have a problem, that I can be right there and not be one of the out-of-town landlords. There's a lot to review in this legislation, and it comes on top of a number of changes that for smallholders like me represent I guess a business question that I have to ask myself, and first of all, I'd like to say, I think that this legislation is inscribed in a larger goal of proaction. And I think that pretty much everybody in this room, I feel, in one way or another supports the idea of proactive legislation and a different approach to code enforcement. So I sit on both sides of the equation, and I'd like to offer my perspective on that. I think that in general, responsible landlords in my position are looking at the speed with which implementation occurs. And I think that if the speed of implementation has occurred and the changes are impactful and disruptive for us, then the reaction of landlords like me will be, this is not for me, because this is something for large corporations. So large corporations have, corporate councils, they have people that are all over this kind of stuff, and they're ready to duke it out, with legal entities or cities and things like that. Smallholders like myself, we don't have that time. I own a manufacturing company. I have 32 employees. I have a lot of other things to worry about in my life. So I just want to sort of alert council to perhaps an unintended consequence if business people, even people who have, who agree in principle with the ideas behind this, if the implementation, I think, is too drastic, draconian, whatever you want to call it, then we as business people may have to go a different route from where our heart would like to go. So, so I just want to, put that as a general thought process for you folks as you decide how you're going to implement legislation that I think fundamentally is well intentioned and probably necessary. So I have a lot of to review, and this is honestly, I know that this has been out there, but it's the first time I really had a close look at it. So there's a couple of things that I think really stand out. And maybe this question has been answered, but I don't know that it has. So here it says, registration fee required. It'll be unlawful for any owner to rent a rental unit within a rental property if it's not registered with the City of Binghamton, for which the proactive fee has not been paid. But most importantly, that does not have a current notice of compliance. So we talked about the fact that we don't have enough code people. So does that put me as a landlord in a situation where I will go there, I'll pay the fee, I won't have a notice of compliance, and I'm not able to collect rent? I would assume that you've thought about that, but I don't see it in the legislation.
Sure. And I think that would go to your first mention of speed of implementation. And I think this was before you arrived, Tom, but I was talking some about the logistics of implementation, still very much in discussion. We know that the rollout of the inspections specifically will need to be phased in, very likely over at least 3 years to accomplish inspecting all of the rental units that will be eligible and impacted by this program. So where the registration and the fee piece in terms of a more immediate deadline after adoption would make sense, we're still working through and intend to continue to discuss with other municipalities how they did it. It's that initial implementation that will take the most work. And so if it's phased in terms of compliance for registration and the fee, or one of the things we've discussed is a more administrative approach that initially ranks. There's an external inspection, properties are ranked in terms of the phase in from there. I mean, so there's the short answer is we're not sure yet, but do recognize that it's that first piece post adoption. But it'll be new for all involved. And so the flexibility within that speed of implementation is certainly warranted.
I understand that. However, the language of the legislation clearly states that the second that you implement this legislation, we are all in violation. So that needs to be addressed somehow. You need to fix that problem because we're instantly in lack of compliance, instantly extremely vulnerable. And again, I'm a business person, so stability is what I look for. So if I see a situation that's unstable or potential, I've got other concerns. And if this is going to take up a lot of my time, I'm going to dump all my properties. And I've got offers. I have a stack of letters at home from out of town companies saying, we want to buy your
About
property.
30
We want to
seconds
buy your
left.
property. Okay. So last, the other thing is, okay, let's say that we overcome that problem and, there's some sort of a accommodation for, you file your paperwork and you wait until the inspection and you're not in violation in the meanwhile. But then the thing is, okay, let's say they come in, there's been very lax code violation. I've had invited the city come in and do a COO on properties, and you have two different code enforcement people, and they have two completely different interpretations of what the legislation is. So I'll finish my question real quick. There needs to be accommodation. This is a major impact. Let's say that we find that one of my properties has something that I really can't afford right now, that was never an issue before, and then all of a sudden it is now. There needs to be a lot of thought given to how are you going to diminish the impact, or how are you going to balance between public safety and the safety of the tenants, and and financially potentially devastating revelations and again, if the one code enforcement officer, I've talked to Chris Slider, I've talked to all the different people, and you talk to 3 code enforcement officers and you get 5 different opinions on a particular subject. So once you sort through that thing, those different standards that we've been exposed to as landlords, how are we going to diminish the impact so that we have time to react to this stuff? If we're immediately, I mean, when I read this and I say, I mean, honestly, the part that scares me, if you're found not to be in compliance, $1,000 a day, I instantly sell my properties, where I pick up that stack of letters and I get the best offers, and I'm out the second that actually happens, if it's something that I financially and logistically am not able to take care of.
Thank you, Tom. And there are so I guess just 3 quick responses. We're at about 7:15, but there are already cumulative civil penalties in existing code ordinances. So that piece isn't necessarily new. They're by and large up to the judge's discretion. And so they're currently available. They're just not very typically implemented. In terms of this legislation as you're reading it right now, the entire point of having community conversations, and I hope I've been consistently clear about this, we believe that it is comprehensive and that it is sound, but it is a draft and it is open to conversation, which is why we're welcoming the input. And that piece certainly already been flagged in terms of immediate impact versus the time that it will take to adopt and implement this responsibly. I do want to give our next folks time to share. Thank you.
Thank you. So my name is Margot Bordeaux. I live in the 2nd district and I'm a homeowner. I'm not a landlord. And I want to thank you for bringing this legislation forward. It's something that's really important. It's not perfect. No legislation ever is. I want to make a couple of points based on things that I've heard today. On my street, the worst property is a rental. It's owned by a local landlord. So we can't lump things. We can't say all the local landlords are good and all the out-of-town ones are bad. It's a business owner problem. I think I don't want to say it's local people, and it's not. To me, that's not the point. Some of the folks have talked about property taxes. I pay property taxes on my home. Everybody pays property taxes. The difference is I don't make money on my property. So there's a difference. I'm contributing. I'm not getting that income back. Let's see. Oh, there was a landlord who spoke about the out-of-town landlord who doesn't take care of the lawn. This legislation would take care of that, or could potentially take care of that or address that. So just kind of sitting here listening. And I think the biggest thing for me is that this legislation would discourage bad landlords from doing business in the city of Binghamton, which to me is a great goal. It's a wonderful city. It's a beautiful city, but there's also places that aren't so beautiful and aren't so well taken care of. So, I think, I don't know, has that been found in other cities that have these policies and legislation? Does it discourage folks? To me, it would seem like it might, because if it becomes too expensive to own and maintain a property here, those folks are going to go elsewhere, like the other gentleman said. Let's see. Oh, so my question is, a lot of folks are questioning, how much time does this take for a landlord? Like if I'm a homeowner, if I'm a business owner, can you break down and figure out how much time this whole process takes? How much time does it take? If I'm a landlord, how much time does it take for me to fill out that registration form, to enter my information either online or however it is, and to pay that fee that I have to pay and have the inspections I need? To me, that doesn't sound like a lot of time. That sounds like I could equate it to, you know, a restaurant, as you mentioned before, doing business within the city of Binghamton. There's consequences to doing business here. And I, you know, respect the work of the health department to keep the restaurants safe. And I want the code enforcement to keep our community safe and to keep it beautiful. So those are kind of some of my comments. So I have one more idea about the rollout. Do a lottery. Just pick a lottery and do a lottery, and the people that get picked are the first ones to go. It's fair. Nobody's going to like it, but that would be my thought. But I want to really thank you for your efforts in bringing this forward. I think it's really needed. And I hope I'm safe when I leave, because I don't think these landlords like me, but thank you.
Can I just quickly share? You know, I'm sitting here and I'm listening and I'm hearing the diverse feedback and inputs from everyone's perspective. And I just like, for those of you who plan to come down, right? It's important for me to hear kind of where you stand, where your concerns are. But I also want to encourage more people to share input, how you want this to look differently. What are suggestions that you have? What are things that like you want us to consider with the actual like proposed legislation? Like that's also, you know what I mean? What I'm listening to hear from folks, like, yes, your thoughts are valuable and we're taking that into consideration. But if you have suggestions, like please include that in your comments as well.
Hi, my name is Peter First. I live in the First Ward. The first question I have for you is, if it's a student housing with 6 bedrooms, will that be considered 6 units? If it's rented by the room?
I think, I mean, if we're talking just the single unit, we are looking at units. So with the multiple tenants, I mean, my initial response would be, regardless of the bedroom size, which would need to be identified in the registration, that we would be considering the standalone unit as those with the common space, the kitchen and the bathroom requirements.
But if the unit is rented on a lease to a student on a separate 6 separate leases in that house, would that be considered 6 units? It's separate. This is 6 separate leases.
Right. I think we understand the question you're saying.
Yeah.
And right now, I believe that it would be considered, that would be considered a single unit, but we could, I think we could consider writing something about congregate living, if it's a congregate living
Yeah,
situation.
I think that'd be a very important thing to do, is because they tax the system and they should be taxed, or should be at least, especially if it's a separate lease to the room. Okay, please consider that.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
really good point.
And I mean, leasing by room is actually something that is not legal to do. And so the like separate leases for a single room as opposed to a full unit. So that can be reported to zoning. I think if I'm understanding what you're saying, you want to see landlords who are providing student housing responsible for a program fee, that $100 a unit. You're saying you want to see all of their single rooms considered as a unit, so they're paying $100 per bedroom.
Exactly.
Maybe maybe it would make sense to break this out as a bedroom fee rather than a unit fee.
I mean, that
but
would
that's-
have a disproportionate impact on families. I,
Well, what happened for in um this, I think it's more if someone's signing a lease. If someone individual, they might be sharing, but if they have a separate lease, even though they're not saying they're renting a bedroom, they're renting this
so
space,
that's, and that's
if
the
they sign a separate
distinction.
lease, that's that's a bit of a legal document that would sense.
They're signing a separate lease as an individual tenant, but they're not signing a lease for a separate unit would be the distinction.
Right.
And that's, so we are looking at each unit. We are going to require with this, as it's written, that each of the bedrooms are identified, but we would not at this point be considering bedrooms.
I should,
to-
then that should be looked at very carefully because I have rentals. I don't charge. I think what some of the students are paying is what I charge for a whole house. So I think you have to consider that monumental amount of money those landlords are getting compared to the little bit of money, let's a 6-bedroom with the $600 they would pay a year for them to be in compliance to that, at least to the fee registration. So just consider that. Just listening to people with signing up for this program, I was thinking might be a good idea to have the landlords, myself included, to put out that you can voluntarily sign up for the program. And that might eliminate at least, the people who are willing to open up their apartments and their places, sign them up, get their money, get some revenue flowing, and then you'd be a good start for the good guys.
I have had some, two large property managers already reach out to inquire, and they're saying a lot of the same things that folks in this room are saying. I keep my properties up to code. I have no problem with someone coming in. Can I voluntarily opt in so that this moves forward? But thank you for that. It's not currently written into the legislation that way, but it's been discussed.
Sounds good. Is it, what's on Front Street, the big apartment building there, 40 Front, is it?
50 Front,
50
the
Front?
luxury.
So what is that, how does that work for those folks, for that property?
They would be required to, so that any rental property, they would be required to register and pay the fee, because if that building has more than 25 units, they would be capped at that maximum building fee. And I mean, there seems to be a distaste for that maximum cumulative fee. I mean, that's certainly something we're willing to not cap if.
Well, why did you cap it? What was your reasoning to cap it?
It's common within some of the other municipalities that we talk to. So,
yeah,
I mean, we tried to not recreate the wheel entirely, but adjust other policies to best represent Binghamton.
Seems a little unfair. There is a question of, we have this lockdown law with the point system. Are you familiar with that? And the lockdown law seems to be very much focused on really bad behaviors, criminal behavior, drug dealing, guns, stuff like that. But there are points to be accumulated from high grass and poor maintenance of a building. So why isn't the lockdown law requirements applied to poor rentals? Or poorly maintained buildings, I should say, not poor rentals. Why?
The policy is separate. I think where it likely coincides and can be implemented as part, not as the lockdown law as it currently stands, but I mentioned a few moments ago that in terms of the rollout, the phase in, the implementation, kind of a ranking was proposed that's in discussion as we consider logistics. And so something like a point system when we're looking at the exterior factors of a building would potentially makes sense in terms of targeting the worst properties first, because that's the whole goal.
That's and somebody mentioned about like a lottery to begin this thing. I wonder if it would be possible without stepping on constitutional toes to take the properties that are most cited in code and start there on that listing of the places that you begin your compliance
And
and
we
your.
have asked Corporation Counsel to look into that.
Yeah, I think that would be a great thing because I'm sure code has a list, hopefully. The other thing is how there's going to be, let's say 10,000 units on this system.
Double.
Where is this all going to be kept? Where can I look that up?
That's a great question. It's currently code enforcement software is entirely internal. Rochester has a publicly available option, though, that they utilize. So I think that's an ideal end goal for this because, yes, we want citywide public health and safety with habitable properties, but we want local property owners and we want tenants who are considering renting from landlords to be able to look into how many code violations those landlords have been cited for, how frequently complaints are made.
That would be a nice thing.
I think there's we've got a little bit of research that has started in participation with the Binghamton University. But again, Rochester has a model to mimic and I don't know that we probably have to get through the implementation of this initial adoption, but that's a goal.
These are modern times.
Great.
We got computers, I think. Anyway, another question is, this is a tough one.
You have just under a minute left.
Yeah, okay. The situation where you have a rental in poor condition, but let's say the situation is they have cockroaches and bed bugs. Is that the landlord's responsibility?
Currently, pest infestations are landlord's responsibility.
Yes, but do you see the contradiction there? They rented, like I've had rentals, I rented them and people have brought in bed bugs and cockroaches. So
Yeah.
you see you have to be careful sometimes where the tenant is the one who should be cited.
One of the ways that we see the notice of compliance functioning is if a landlord can demonstrate, if an infestation is cited and they end up in code court or they're in correspondence with code about that citation, they can demonstrate that they have a current and active notice of compliance and that they do maintain their properties. And that can be considered when code is addressing those citations. So I see that the notice of compliance as an opportunity for landlords to demonstrate that they do maintain their properties.
Yeah.
And that it's not of their own.
So landlords can take pictures that before somebody moves in, take pictures, make no busted windows, no holes in the walls type of thing. So when code comes in and says, oh, you got a busted window here, you know, there's this gray area of who's to blame and who, I'll fix it. But do I get a point for that? You know what I mean? Anyway, that's probably, these are things that are tough to answer.
No, I think they were really great points. And immediately after Councilmember Murray kind of represented what could be adjusted, what could be addressed. And I think that last piece again is why I wanted to clarify at the outset, and I don't think you had come in yet, that the individual code violations wouldn't impact otherwise the compliance mechanisms within this legislation.
All right, thanks.
Robert Merwin, here to represent R&R Holdings. We are an LLC. We are a commercial investor. I got a couple of things. Why are you picking on landlords? You can drive around Binghamton right now and the single family homes are dumps in this town. There's garbage everywhere, cars everywhere, junk everywhere. I got 2 buildings on both sides of one of mine. They're dumps, but they're single family homes, so they're exempt from you. If you get your code guy to drive around and from the sidewalk, you can see their dumps and keep on these single family homeowners to keep their shit nice, it would be great. All right. And two, thanks for victim blaming. All right. I'm not the one wrecking my apartments. I'm not the one doing the junk. What about these tenants that have all these rights? Do you know how hard it is to get a bad tenant out of an apartment? You'll be 6 to 8 months and they can be in there wrecking whatever they want. Okay, great. Security deposit, 1 month's rent, $800, $1,000. Go buy one refrigerator. All right. Pay somebody to haul that refrigerator up 3 flights of stairs and put it in. You know, I started off renting to nothing but professionals. You know what the problem with that is? Binghamton's such a dump. All my professionals left at 8 months. You know why? Nothing here for anybody that makes any good money. I had a lawyer left. I had a pharmacist, made 98 grand a year right out of freaking pharmacy school. Stayed here long enough to get his resume good so he could get the heck out of here. All right. I had an attorney left, architect left. All my good tenants left. So now I have to rent to people that are Section 8. You know, these are people, they're good people. They're just, you know, maybe they rode the little bus to school. You know what I'm saying? They're good people. They can live on their own. I deal with HUD. I deal with Catholic Charities. All right. We deal with the YWCA. We got social services. We deal, and I have my buildings inspected. Every one of my buildings, when they're inspected, smoke detectors are in, everything's fine. When the tenant leaves, guess what? $55 smoke detector gone. Okay, $55, not a big deal. Okay, I got one building that's got 20 of them in it, all right? And I wanted to spare a little myth that most of these landlords will tell you, and maybe I'm doing it wrong, but at the end of a month, if you're doing everything right, you didn't have a tenant die where now you got 8 months of probate getting their junk out of your apartment because they just died or whatever. At the end of a month, if you clear $100 profit after taxes, paying the lawnmower, paying the insurance, putting a little aside for all this, all right? So I don't know where you guys are thinking we're getting all this money, all right? I didn't fly in here on my helicopter, all right? It's hard to make a living. The only benefit you get as a landlord is just maybe in 10, 15 years, if I can keep the place from falling into the ground and tenants wrecking it at a faster pace than I can fix it, that I can sell it for more than I paid for it. That's going to be it. But the month to month, because I'll tell you what, $100 a door profit. I don't know how many of you are getting up at 11 o'clock at night to drive into Binghamton to unlock a door for a tenant that locked it out, to deal with the Binghamton City Police. So, I mean, if we're going to start with this, let's get your code enforcement to do their job now. Let's not add extra to us poor landlords. You say it isn't a big deal to raise the rent $8 a month to cover this. You want to come over and tell my tenants $8 a month isn't that much money? It is to some of these people. I don't know who you think's renting here in Binghamton. Your choices are expats from New York City who are here on welfare, because there's signs in New York City that say if you're on welfare, move to Binghamton because it's cheap to live, and students. That's it. I tried for professionals. I really, really did, because they're nice, but they don't stay long. So I don't know where you guys are coming up. And it's great to protect these tenants, but they're the problem. All right. I have tenants wrecked apartments, $5,000, $6,000 in damages. So now if I have you guys come in and inspect, 3 years later you inspect and I fail code, same tenant, can I use that to take to court to sue them? Can I have your code guy come in as a subpoenaed witness? Because I'm damn sure going to use that against them. Hey, it was nice when you moved in. 3 years later, it's a dump. I didn't go over there and bust the windows, punch holes through the walls, knock the doors off the hinges, flush spoons down the toilet, jam up my plumbing with feminine hygiene products that I have to go over at 11 o'clock on a Friday night and snake out. Like, I'm glad you guys are all under this misconception. We're just rolling in the dough. But I tell you what, and I have quite a few units, $100 a door is on a good month. If everything has gone pretty good. We get a bad winter. We get heavy snow where I got to pay my plow guy to go over and ice the sidewalk down. And then if I do have property damage, I call Binghamton City Police and they're useless. I had doors kicked off the hinges. The cop pulled in the driveway after 20 minutes of talking. I had to ask him if he wanted to come up and take pictures of the damage. Oh, do you think I should? I don't know. Maybe you just should. Huh? But they've never once. I've had to call for nothing I've done, not me being a bad landlord, just either people walking by. Never once has Binghamton City Police helped us at all. So if you're going to impose this on us, you got to give us some way to help you make things nice.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
To be very clear, You are welcome to come and share for your 5 minutes and we will listen to your feedback. The moment you begin disparaging low income and disabled tenants is the moment I personally stop listening, to be very clear. Your time was done, your time is up. You've said your piece.
Hi, my name's Stuart Kazmarczyk. I've been doing this for about 30 to 40 years. In that time, I might have had code enforcement with problems on all of the properties that I've owned, maybe about 5 times. I'm circulating pictures around here. This is a good cause eviction, all right? It took my lawyer 11 months to get them out. I put over $5,000 and remodeled that property, then they moved it in. And you take a look at the pictures and you look and see what they did. Besides the fact that they owe me 11 months rent, which when I went to court, they had to say, okay, your lawyer screwed up. He included late fees. You can't include late fees, right? He also said he filed too soon. The judge says, I can't tell you how I'm going to rule, but if you let these people stay for another month and a half, they'll be out on May 15th. Okay, May 15th comes, they're not out. Now I got to go to the jail. I got to pay $180 to have them evicted. They still here. June 3rd, I got them out. Look at what they did to the property. And this was over a period. I tried to evict them in August of last year because they were pigs. And that I waited for the year to do it. And since then, since I tried to evict them, they quit paying. It took me 11 months to get them out of there. And the damage that they did, these people live like this. Now, how long do you think me renting a 2-bedroom apartment or a 3-bedroom apartment, getting $900 to $1,100 a month, how long is it going to take me to recoup $11,000 worth of damage? You know, the other thing is, how many single family and 2-family or rentals is the difference? Because again, like that man said, I got neighbors that don't mow their lawn. They don't do anything. I have a crew that goes around and mows all of my lawns, takes care of everything. So let's not charge just landlords, because the whole problem isn't just landlords. One of the biggest problems is tenants. You guys do nothing to tenants. They have free reign. They can do damn well as they please. Call code enforcement. I called them 5 times on these people. They put 30 bags of garbage out, right? You know what code enforcement does? They send them a letter. They don't do anything about it. They send a garbage truck over, charge me $250. I didn't put the garbage there, and I told them. I called code on these people. I call code, and what does code do? Every time I get the bill. You tell me, we're not doing anything to tenants. They have free reign. They know they get, pro bono lawyers. They're better than the lawyers that I'm hiring. You got to be kidding me. Let's raise everybody's taxes, $50 a unit or $50 a house, because it's everybody. I drive down the streets. I've got property all over here, and everywhere I go, it's single family and it's 2-family. My properties are taken care of. I hire people to take care of it. I don't have issues. You want to go after people? Go after the people that are in violation, right? Why are you coming after me? I have no violations. But I have 1 violation in a year, right? And now you're going to ride me and I got 15 properties? This is ridiculous. Go after the people that have the violation. Don't go after us. If they get violations, start fining them, take them to court. I take these people to court, I'm going to get a judgment for $11,000, $12,000. You know how much I'm going to collect? 0. And you know that, and I know that, right? But I spend the time and I do that because I hope that it destroys. Now, if you go to Florida, people get evicted in Florida for things like this. They'll never rent in Florida again. That's what we need to do. We got to get firm with tenants too, because I did not rent that property looking like that. And nobody would ever rent it looking like that. So now I've got to go put new floors in, everything. And these people are living under those conditions. And I can't do anything about it because every time I call code sends them a letter. And what do? Code finds me. Isn't that stupid? I agree with that guy. You just raise the taxes on everybody. Increase the taxes. Why pick on just the landlord? Because you think I'm making money when somebody does $11,000?
You have 1 minute left.
$11,000 in 1 year on that property. You think I'm making money? I'm not making money. Thank you.
I mean, he
And that's-
kind of had a good idea. Instead of raising the taxes on everybody, maybe we should do a tax assessment and get all the property values registered to 2025 versus a 1993 tax assessment and see where that balances everything out.
That is certainly something to consider. I do want to again reiterate.
Say that one out loud.
So there's,
Thank
I do want to again reiterate, so homeowners are still required to be compliant with code enforcement. So this does, the proactive rental housing inspection program addresses rental housing within the city, but the single family homes that have been mentioned, those are still required to be compliant. So this does not do away with those requirements under existing code enforcement.
Hello, my name is Miles Burnett. I'm a West Side resident and housing advocate. I'm happy to be here tonight as our city council continues to address our housing crisis. I want to thank the Binghamton City Council for all their work on this issue. I do wish that there were more tenants here tonight to share about their experiences and the conditions that they are living in. Their concerns that are here tonight are important, but I think we're getting not a full picture, to be honest. I do believe that housing providers here in this room tonight represent some of the most present and responsible in our community, and I very much appreciate their perspective, and I do hope that it is helpful to the council in your work to perfect this legislation as it goes forward. But I believe that housing is a human right. I think that we have a duty to protect residents, especially the most vulnerable. And it sounds like most people in this room here tonight agree with that. But a lot of what has already been said about why moving from a reactive to a proactive code enforcement model is so critical and why updating our code system will deliver for residents. But I do want to lift up a few things. I'm going to try to keep within my time. So I think that this model of code enforcement that you're putting forward will shift more of the responsibility for safe, healthy rental spaces away from tenants and to the city, as well as housing providers, but it'll also incorporate the city in a way that isn't currently being seen. I think that it will also prevent our housing rental stock from further deterioration. I know that there has been remarks tonight about the conditions of properties and the blight that they are to the street, but I encourage people to imagine if that's the blight that you're seeing from the street, what the conditions are for the folks that are living inside those dwellings. And I think that we do need to care about blight, but we also need to prioritize safety. I think we've seen that this year, and that safety is key. I also believe that while our community has many great housing providers doing right by their tenants, we also have to hold accountable those who are not. And those are not only out of area landlords. Maybe not the people in this room tonight are those folks, but we do have local housing providers that allow their properties to go into disrepair. And we need to hold people accountable for that, whether you're out of area or in area, in my opinion. And I also believe that by having code enforcement inspect, and people have brought up housing court and conditions of units already tonight, but I do think that having this model and having code enforcement inspect and certify that units and structures are up to code, I believe that housing providers will have a stronger argument and proof in housing court that a tenant caused those damages and that the situation was not caused by the property owner. I know that that's often an issue in housing court and that the blame falls on housing providers, and this would be a remedy to that in some ways. So beyond all of that, I think that this legislation does beef up code enforcement. Many people here tonight have talked about a need for more code enforcement, right? This will add several more officers to the ranks at no additional cost to property taxpayers. Binghamton code enforcement at present are very overburdened and very understaffed. I think we all know that. They are asked to do too much with too little. This legislation will put more code enforcement officers in our neighborhoods that are able to address concerns raised by tenants, housing providers, homeowners, and businesses alike. The cost of these additional officers will be funded through that fee that you mentioned on rental units, and it's maxing out at about $8 a month. I think Tarek mentioned some interesting examples of what $8 a month is.
You have
to
about
most folks.
45 seconds left.
Thank you. I'll talk quickly. This is particularly important right now because Binghamton's code enforcement is under threat by our president's administration and the proposed cuts to our city. Currently, half of our code enforcement salaries are paid through federal block grant program, which is endangered. This programmatic income generated from proactive rental housing inspection system can fully fund the officers we have and the new staff required to implement it. It is not enough to simply complain about what is happening in Washington. Local governments need to fight back, and this bill does exactly that by essentially Trump-proofing Binghamton's code enforcement without raising property taxes. If proactive code passes, it will mean residents get more for their tax dollars. I really thank you all for holding this tonight and for listening to everyone in this room and taking the time to answer their questions. And I really do appreciate all the feedback from the residents and the stakeholders here tonight. So thank you very much.
Most of my questions were answered. Hello. My name is Jeannie Frey and I live in the first ward, and we have a few rental properties citywide, most usually in less desirable areas, and have bought houses and rehabbed them in only single family homes to give people the opportunity. I know what it was like to live in an apartment, and I thought it was very important that people have that opportunity to have their own home. So we facilitate. We do not make a lot of money, let me tell you. I have just a couple questions. And this is because years ago, they had this same type of thing where everybody in the city had to register a local manager that was accessible. So and now you can't get a hold of these managers, half of them. So how do you plan to verify that the housing managers are accessible and we can get a hold of them? I mean, not me personally, but some tenants have said through our neighborhood watch that they cannot contact the managers, and it's very important. It's been some issues.
Verifying, so we do ask that local authorized representative is identified as well as the entity tenants can contact and their relationship to the landlord. That relationship to the landlord piece is important. So upon receiving the registration, we will work to verify what's in there. How that moves through the duration of the notice of compliance, I'm not entirely sure how to persist, I would say verify in perpetuity, but it is something that can be reported to code if something that was identified on the registration or informed to the tenants is not panning out to be accurate.
Well, I can tell you that frequently the housing managers you cannot contact them. And I doubt that there would be anything that they would fear from the committee. That's all I'm saying. The only other thing I have to say is, and it was kind of touched previously, that the tenants seem to have more rights than the landlords. We went to supposed council presentation for, what was the name of it? Good cause eviction. After an hour and 45 minutes, they never even talked about the landlords. All we heard about was the rights of the tenants. It was very, very disappointing because we had gone and looked forward to having some information. Anyway, because when you do have the damage, and now we had before where tenants would call and make a complaint to code, something they did, and then they wouldn't let us in even to correct that a violation. And then it just goes on and on and on. So I think sometimes you have to be more aware that there are a lot of undesirable tenants. And it would be good if there, somewhere I saw a sign that said it was like a landlord forum where if you have these tenants that are very undesirable, perhaps they could get together and some of these people, I don't know where they would go, but I just think sometimes the tenants have more rights than the landlords. And when we signed up before, we paid, this was years ago when council put through in the city, and we paid the fee. We had a house go down in the flood and we had to pay for a vacant. We contacted them. We said, listen, this went down in the flood. We just need a little time. I mean, it went up into the first floor. Everything was damaged. Didn't matter. We paid our fines, paid that yearly vacancy. So sometimes I think it is difficult for some landlords when you try your best.
You have about a minute left.
I'm really finished anyway, but thank you very much for doing that.
We do have, so we are at 7:52. I believe we have two comments that were sent in that we do want to make sure are read on the record.
Got you. Thank you. So from still here, but not for long. Dear Mayor Cram and Binghamton City Council members, as a small landlord, I'm writing in strong opposition to the proposed proactive rental housing inspection program and to the broader direction this council appears to be taking against independent housing providers who genuinely care about their properties, tenants, and neighborhoods. Let me be clear, I fully support safe, habitable housing, but this proposal does not achieve that goal. Instead, it imposes broad punitive fees on small, responsible landlords while failing to address the real causes of many code violations, namely tenant behavior and lack of accountability. Let's begin with one of the most glaring issues, the flat fee structure. I own about 24 units, mostly single-family homes, duplexes, and triplexes scattered across Binghamton. Under this proposal, I would pay the same total inspection fee for those 25 units as a corporate landlord managing 200 to 300 units in a single building. 25 units is not the same as 250. Why should I, a small housing provider with limited margins and no access to millions in grant funding, pay $2,500 in total inspection fees while large, well-funded companies with long records of code violations pay the same? This structure props up corporate landlords while punishing local ones doing the real work on the ground. But the deeper problem no one is addressing is tenant responsibility. I maintain my homes to high standards. I screen tenants carefully. I don't rent out any unit I wouldn't live in myself. When tenants respect the space, I go above and beyond to make sure they're safe and comfortable. But not all tenants act responsibly. Some dump trash, disable smoke detectors, misuse appliances, or leave thousands of dollars in damage behind. Right now, I'm repairing a property a tenant destroyed before disappearing while owing 2 months' rent and damages. The damage exceeds $15,000. I'm not fixing it to re-rent. I'm preparing to sell it. And frankly, I no longer care if the buyer is an out-of-town investor. Why should I when the city of Binghamton clearly doesn't value responsible community-based ownership? According to a 2022 report by the National Apartment Association, tenant damage is a top 3 reason landlords remove properties from the rental market, and such damage directly reduces housing supply. In New York State, nearly 20% of small landlords have exited or plan to exit the market due to unmanageable costs, overregulation, and unrecouped tenant cost damage. Let's be honest, tenant behavior plays a key role in property decline and reduced availability. When units are damaged, they're pulled off the market for weeks or months, contributing to Binghamton's housing shortage far more than is being acknowledged. Take a drive down South Mary Street. You'll see garbage piles, broken furniture, and unlicensed vehicles. Are those landlord-created issues or tenant-created ones? Yet landlords are expected to bear the cost of violation citations and multiple inspections, even for issues we didn't cause and were never notified about. If this program proceeds, I want clear written accountability standards, such as trash dumped on the lawn or stockpiled beside the house, tenant, smoke detector removed after move-in, tenant, unlicensed vehicle in the driveway, tenant, holes in walls or broken doors after move-in, tenant, misuse of plumbing or electrical systems, tenant, unsanitary conditions like bed bugs, roaches, and garbage-filled rooms, tenant, erected pools without proper fencing, tenant, unapproved over occupancy, tenant. What's the plan when tenant damage triggers a failed inspection? Will the city bill the tenant, or will landlords be forced to pay the reinspection fee and then try to recover costs from someone already behind on rent? Will landlords have a right to challenge reinspection fees if we provide clear documentation that the hazard was caused by the tenant? Furthermore, if inspections reveal serious safety hazards caused by tenants like exposed wiring, tampered smoke alarms, or filth that endangers children, I fully expect Child Protective Services to be notified. That is not just a code issue, it's a matter of child safety. Has the city discussed the expected increase in CPS referrals and costs with Broome County? Has the city of Binghamton communicated with Broome County DSS or CPS about the likely influx of children needing emergency housing? If, as city council claims, so many rental units are uninhabitable, this proposal does not go after slumlords. It targets the very landlords doing the hard work, maintaining homes, responding to middle of the night calls, and managing tenants who do not always uphold their end of the lease. You're not improving housing, you're making it harder to provide. Meanwhile, there are no city efforts to promote tenant accountability or support sustainable housing pathways like homeownership. Why not publicize the free pre-lease code inspections that already exist? Why not run home ownership workshops or connect tenants with local, state, and federal grant opportunities? Instead, Councilwoman Rathmel referred to this very proposal as a cash cow. Even if said in jest, that comment raises serious concerns about the underlying motives. As Nate, a fellow landlord, rightly said at the planning meeting, the recent passage of cause eviction laws has already begun pushing independent landlords out of the market and has contributed to rising rents, exactly as predicted by the New York State Association of Realtors and the Brookings Institution. This proposal will only accelerate that trend, shrinking the housing supply even further and raising rents again. Finally, I have to ask, why is this proposal only being marketed to certain demographics instead of the community as a whole? I thought we were one city, not a divided one where only some voices matter while others are dismissed. Perhaps that exclusion was part of the plan all along. I urge you to withdraw or fundamentally revise this legislation. Housing is a shared responsibility, and any inspection program that fails to account for tenant accountability, proportional cost sharing, and procedural fairness is not a solution. It's a step backward. Sincerely, not the problem, just paying for it. A housing provider the city is pushing out, still here, but for how long? Then we have from, excuse me, Nate Weinberg, is that correct? Yes. From Nate Weinberg. Hi, thank you for taking the time to allow public comment on the proposed law. I hope that you will take these comments seriously as the consequences are real. The way the law reads, it says landlords must have 0 housing code violations. However, do you know what counts as a housing code violation? If you haven't read the code and understand every aspect of it, you probably shouldn't pass laws about it. Here are just a few examples of things that are against code. A 1-inch crack or unevenness in the wall, any piece of grass more than 8 inches tall on the property, a single piece of trash on the property, an apartment that has a code lock and not a key against the law, a leaky faucet that a tenant did not notify the landlord about, a missing smoke detector because the tenant removed it, 2-millimeter hole or crack anywhere on the property that an ant could crawl through. All of these are violations. The housing stock in Binghamton is generally 100+ years old, and I'm sure every single property technically has hundreds of petty violations. Why not do what other cities have done and upfront provide a list of specific items that will be inspected? Here are the 10 important safety/code things that we are going to inspect for. I think we can all agree that things like smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, handrails for steps, proper venting of fumes, roofs that don't leak, and the select few other things are all important. And I absolutely would support the inspection of those items, but should I really be told that I can't collect rent and need to pay more in fines because my tenant decided to leave trash out or because there is a 1-inch crack somewhere on the wall? Sounds very unfair to the landlord. Additionally, according to paragraph 16, section B1, if a single violation is found, even if it is fixed in the allowed time frame, it is illegal for the landlord to increase rent for 1 year. So all the tenant needs to do is punch a hole in the wall before the inspection, and the landlords have to pay a reinspection fee, and the landlord needs to pay higher annual fees, and the tenant guarantees themselves no rent increases for a year. Sounds very unfair to the landlord. I also think the fees are excessive, especially because the reduced annual fee only applies if 0 violations were found. So if the tenant rips the smoke detector off the wall, I am automatically disqualified for the reduced fees for the next year, because I had a violation at the time of inspection. And then I also need to pay for a reinspection. It should be that if a landlord comes into compliance within the allotted time frame, that then they get to pay the reduced fee, and a reinspection fee should only apply if violations are not corrected after the compliance period. I also think it is unfair to charge landlords an annual fee during the years their property is not being inspected. Albany only charges a fee during the year or inspection, and Oneonta does not charge any fee from what I could tell. Lastly, I find it's funny that the city wants to charge landlords crazy fees and hold them to impossible standards when the city itself does not maintain its own buildings and roads. Whereas the law that says I don't need to pay my taxes because the city streets are in such bad shape that people wouldn't even rent my property because of all the potholes in front of my house. If the city wants to hold landlords to a higher standard, they should also hold themselves to a higher standard, and they should also hold tenants to a higher standard. This recent attack on landlords is extremely unfair. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We are at 8. Is this something you wanted to make sure was on the record or something we can talk about after?
It'll be quick.
Okay, go for it.
I just think the running theme from all of the local landlords is it's just a little bit more control over something that we're able to control ourselves. I think that's kind of like the running theme. I totally understand people who want this because again, it is something that is like a written standard. It's control, but you know, when people don't comply, you need control. But my question is, so many local mom and pop landlords, they don't understand like how to do taxes regarding it. They don't understand that like fair housing, like, you know, people used to say, if you wouldn't live with them, you wouldn't rent to them. So like, how is this going to be, I guess, implemented for those who just really don't have a care for like local laws or just don't pay any mind to it and are kind of just doing their thing, you know, life isn't bothering them. They're just running their renting to people they know and love and forget to, you know, file because they've been renting to their sister or their cousin who's been living there for 20 years. How would you like target them, number one, or I guess address that issue? Because some people just aren't complying because they ignorance of the law, right? That's kind of it. Just like how would you target, if you would even target people who just ignorance of the law? They don't know they're supposed to file, they don't pay attention, they've been doing the same thing for 40 years, they rent to their cousin, mother, sister, whatever. And it's not an issue.
Okay, thank you for representing that. We do have it on record, so we can consider all of the questions that were identified. We are past 8. I want to thank all of you who came, who shared, appreciate your feedback and for coming out tonight. I do need a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion to adjourn.
Can I get a second? I second. Okay, I'm going to second that. All right, okay. Meeting adjourned.
All in favor? Aye.